3, which is the superintendent's report.
What we thought we would do for folks that weren't here at the last meeting is just quickly review, give the similar budget presentation that we did a couple weeks ago at our, I guess it'd be a February board meeting. And again, this would be a review for our board members, as this is pretty identical to what we presented 2 weeks ago. Did add a couple slides towards the end to answer a couple of questions that were brought up at the end of that, and we'll go over that. But I will just kind of tag team it with Aaron a little bit and let him take it.
Again, we're going based on our preliminary budget of the $2.6 million deficit. That will change. We'll have a meeting next Monday regarding strictly budget. That will be updated. So as we move on here, understanding the education or the business part of education. We know that there are many state mandates. These mandates include, but are not limited to, PIMS and child accounting reporting, booster title reporting, state assessment, educator effectiveness, special ed caseloads, a number of different issues. We also have federal mandates. Uniform guidance, which is new, and there's continued improvement upon these new guidance for purchasing requirements to support, not supplant, and account for non-public schools. We've been giving you a lot of information. We wanted to be able to provide an alternative source of the information. The state had a basic education funding commission, and that commission's sole objective was to provide a fair and equitable funding formula. And they produced this report, and I'm stating here that in that report on page 24, they state that salary and benefits for the state, for the average within the state in a school district is 78%. We currently are sitting about 74%. Also, we're a service-oriented industry. Money is invested into the people and it's not into the products. Lastly, according to this basic education funding formula, the factors in state funding is the local capacity to generate revenue, household income, sparsity, student count, ESL, poverty, and charter school enrollment. Key thing I would like to focus on here is your local capacity to generate revenue. Part of what drives that is your market value personal income ratio. You can all go online to PD's website, they'll provide that market value personal income ratio, whereas Mill Creek's is quite low, stating that your market values are high, your household incomes are also high.
So what Aaron is saying in a nutshell is that in the eyes of the state considers Mill Creek a wealthy school district, and as such, for us to maintain and build upon our programs, they expect us to raise property taxes. That's how the system is set up. And that's the system that we have to work within.
And let's not forget either, from a state standpoint, that Pennsylvania is one of the worst in providing funding for public education within the country. Moving on. Total revenue per student. We should be familiar with this slide. I presented it a number of times. Red's Mill Creek, gray's the IU average, black's local cohorts, and green is the state average. Our total revenue per student is well below the IU average by $2,200, and our cohorts average by over $3,000. We are 67% locally funded, which primarily drives how much revenue we have per student. As we are 67% locally funded, let's take a look at our equalized mills. Where does our tax rate compare? This equalized mill is trying to make, if everybody's house values were constant, where does your tax rate stack up? As you can see here, ours is quite low. This is as of 2013. We probably have made a little bit of a movement towards the IU, but look how far we are below our cohorts. These are the folks who have the same household incomes, same unemployment rate as Mill Creek. We are well below in tax rate. What is the impact of not raising taxes? Again, this was a BDO slide. As you can see here, the impact of not raising taxes for the 2009-2010 year was $1.7 million. In the 2010-11 year, generated an additional 1.1, 11-12, 1.2, to come out to a gross of 1.8 million. However, raising taxes 1 year is compounded over the future years. So as we look down here at the bottom, 1 year, $1.7 million. Year 2, the district is out $740,000. Year 3, $2 million, to compound to $4.5 million over 3 years. We were asked, what was the impact of raising taxes the last 3 years? So this is the same idea here. At 1.5 for the 13-14 year, this district generated in tax revenue. 14-15, 2.4. 15-16, 1.7. You can see row number 2 here is compounded. So where would we be right now if we did not raise taxes over the last 3 years? Down a deficit of $8.4 million.
And I would remind everybody that 3 years ago, when things collapsed, we started at a deficit of $8.8 million, as we know.
Let's take a look at our expenditures. Next week, we will be taking any questions regarding all expenditures over budget, but as a high overview of this, you can see, I told you earlier that 74% of our total budget is salary or bennies driven. Here we go, all the blue. Plus this additional 1%. You have about 7% wrapped up in debt, which is our bonds, 4% transportation costs. That leaves 15% for everything else. Now, what's included in that 15%? You're talking utilities. You're talking tuition for any cyber charter. You're talking other fees associated with normal operations. So that 15% is more or less probably closer to 7, if not 5. Let's take a look at our expenditures per student. We obviously don't generate as much revenue per student, therefore we can't spend as much per student. The same concept applies here. As you can see, we're well below what everybody else is spending per student. Let's take another look at our expenditure per student. Now this graph is, the green line here is the average student count for the IU. The black line above is Mill Creek's student count, which you can see here, which is driven from this grade axis. The red is Mill Creek's dollars per student spent. The gray is the IU's average dollars spent. Our enrollment's up here, but our cost per student that we're spending is much below the IU average compared to where their enrollment is. So our strategic long-term plan. We know we can't entirely rely on taxes every year to balance our budget. We also know that the district can't provide everything to everybody. There simply isn't enough money given the pension cost and the salary, medical. So what are our priorities? Providing a high-quality education, maintain pupils. And doing that, extracurriculars is part of that. Technology upgrades. We've neglected technology in this district for about the last 10 years. We're in desperate need of upgrading our technology. It's getting to the point where you really can't even use the technology in the rooms. State to provide a budget and address the pension cost. We don't know. There's a major uncertainty over our state budget. We don't even have a budget for this current 15-16 year. They're trying to discuss 16-17. What's going to be our appropriation according to the state budget? Could we rely on anything the state even provides right now until a budget actually is passed? We need to invest in our buildings and equipment. We need to establish a capital reserve. We know we have aging buildings. We need to maintain these buildings. We need to be more proactive. And doing that, establishing a capital reserve does that.
Just as a reminder, with the bond money and the improvements that we've been making across the district, and most notably up at the high school, that's all bond money that was borrowed back in 2010 when we thought we were going to be doing a new high school. That's separate from the budget. That money has to be spent on upgrading our facilities. It cannot be used for the budget. So it's separate money. And as you know, we prioritize safety, curricular, and extracurricular in terms of priorities for spending that bond money. We have it spent down. We have not been cited for arbitrage because we were sitting on that money for 2 or 3 years before we started spending back in 2013. So we are coming to the end of those bond projects, and yes, they are upgrading some of our extracurricular facilities. But again, we prioritize safety, curricular, and extracurricular. So we're at the tail end of that, but that's not to be confused